Have you ever walked into a room, maybe it was a crowded party or a really busy office, and seen someone who just naturally commands everyone's attention?
Oh, yeah. Like you look over and people are simply drawn to them. They have this gravitational pull.
Exactly. And when you witness that, do you automatically assume they were simply born with that magical gift?
Right. You think, well, I could never do that. I just don't have that special genetic code.
Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome to ESL Listening Practice.
Thanks for being here, everyone.
Today, we're sharing our recent personal research and some really fascinating insights into a psychological concept, the true meaning of charisma.
Yeah, what it actually is and how anyone can actually develop it.
And because we know a lot of you use ESL Listening Practice to, sharpen your English comprehension.
Especially you guys at the intermediate or B2 level.
Right, we're doing double duty today. We'll be unpacking the human behavior behind charisma while also taking the time to carefully explore the English vocabulary used to describe these social dynamics.
Because we really want to give you insights that you can use in your everyday life, whether you're trying to navigate an English conversation or sitting down for a job interview or just trying to understand your workplace.
So let's just jump right in. And I think the best place to start is by completely tearing down the cultural assumptions around this topic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you ask 100 strangers to describe a charismatic person, almost all of them will paint the exact same picture.
Right. They describe someone with flawless social skills.
Yeah. They picture someone who walks into a room, flashes this massive, blinding smile, and immediately starts telling the most entertaining stories.
I always picture like a slick movie star sitting on the late night talk show couch.
Yes. Perfect example.
Like, they have a clever response to every single question. They never stumble over their words. They're just the loudest, most confident presence in the room.
And we treat that as the ultimate standard for charisma, but, the research we've been doing completely shatters that assumption.
It really does.
Yeah.
True charisma is actually not about being the loudest person.
No, not at all. It is entirely about how people feel when they are in your presence.
Which is such a massive shift in thinking. Because we spend so much time thinking charisma is a performance, right? A show we put on.
Yeah, an external performance. But our findings indicate that true charisma is actually an internal experience that you trigger in someone else.
Specifically, you make someone else feel comfortable. You make them feel genuinely interesting. And you make them feel deeply connected to you.
Right. But before we get into how to actually do that, let's explore some of the language we're using here.
Good idea. Let's start with the word charisma itself.
Yeah, we throw this word around constantly in English.
We do. Basically, charisma is a special power to attract or charm people. It can inspire devotion in others.
But what really fascinates me is how deeply tied it is to the concept of a myth.
Oh, the charisma myth. We mentioned that loud, joking person is the charisma myth.
Yeah, and when native English speakers use the word myth in a conversational setting, we aren't usually talking about ancient Greek gods like Zeus,
Right, no. We use myth to describe a widely held but fundamentally false belief.
Exactly. It's a story society agrees is true, but when you test it against reality, it falls apart.
Like the myth that humans only use 10% of their brains.
Yes. It sounds true, movies repeat it, but neurologists will tell you it's totally false.
So the idea that you must be a loud performer to be charismatic, that's just a modern social myth.
Which ties directly into another really common English phrase we need to explain.
Born with it.
Yes, born with it. When we look at that loud extrovert, we tell ourselves they were just born with it.
Meaning they have a natural ability from the very moment of their birth. You didn't study it, genetics just handed it to you.
Like someone who is incredibly tall, you'd say they were born with it.
Right. And we assume charisma is like eye color. You either have blue eyes or you don't. You either have charisma or you don't.
And that is the most damaging part of the myth. Because it gives people an excuse to just stop trying.
If you think it's a genetic lottery, you just surrender.
But the reality of charisma, this ability to make people feel comfortable, is a series of repeatable behaviors.
So let's visualize the difference between the myth and the reality. I have an analogy I've been thinking about from our research.
Oh, I love analogies. Let's hear it.
Think of a loud, flashy advertisement. Imagine you're walking down a street in a huge city like Times Square or Shibuya Crossing.
Oh yeah, giant neon signs everywhere.
flashing bright red and yellow lights. The screens are huge, the colors are blinding, and they totally dominate your vision.
They force you to look at them through sheer volume.
Exactly. And that is what most people think charisma is. They think they need to walk into a party and be that flashing neon sign.
But the problem with the neon sign is that it's exhausting to look at for too long.
Right. It grabs your attention, but it doesn't hold your connection. You eventually just want to walk away from the noise.
So what's the alternative model if we aren't neon signs?
The alternative is a quiet, beautiful painting hanging in a museum.
Oh, I like that.
Imagine walking into a gallery. The painting isn't making noise. It isn't flashing lights.
But there's something so deep and authentic about it that you naturally gravitate toward it.
You want to cross the room and just stand in front of it. And when you do, you feel calm. You feel curious.
You feel a connection to the art. You don't have to be a loud advertisement to make an impact.
True charisma is much more like that quiet painting.
And the psychology behind that is profound. The neon sign demands your attention, but the painting invites your attention.
There is a massive biological difference in how the human nervous system responds to being demanded versus being invited.
Right. When someone demands our attention by being loud, our nervous system registers a slight threat. We put our guard up.
But when someone invites our attention by being calm, our nervous system downregulates. We feel safe.
And feeling safe is the fundamental prerequisite for feeling a connection.
But, if that's the case, if the quiet invitation is actually more charismatic, why do so many quiet people feel like they lack charisma?
That's a great question.
Like, I have friends who are incredibly thoughtful, but they carry this deep shame that they aren't charismatic. Why is that?
Well, the disconnect happens because society conflates extroversion with charisma.
Conflates. Let's define that for our listeners.
To conflate means to mistakenly mix two different things together.
Right, treating them as the same thing.
Exactly. Extroversion is simply a personality trait. It means a person is naturally outgoing and gains energy from large groups.
Whereas introverts spend energy in large groups and need solitude to recharge.
Either trait is better. But society, especially Western business culture, actively rewards extroverted behavior.
It tells quiet people that their natural way of being is somehow a social deficit.
We send this constant message that if you're quiet, you're doing something wrong, speak up more, be aggressive.
But our analysis shows that true charisma has zero reliance on extroversion. You can be the most introverted person on the planet and have immense charisma.
Think about someone in your life who rarely speaks, but when they finally do, the entire room goes silent to listen.
They don't waste words. Their presence carries weight.
Or the person who sits across from you at a noisy coffee shop, and they listen with such intense focus that the room just disappears.
That ability requires zero shouting, zero jokes. It is purely about presence.
And presence requires no performance. Which leads us into a really dark territory we uncovered in our research.
Oh, the faking it part.
Yeah. If charisma is just making people feel comfortable, why do people fail so spectacularly when they actively try to do it?
Whenever I see people actively trying to be charismatic, it usually creates the exact opposite effect. It pushes people away.
It's the danger of trying too hard. When you use artificial tricks, it triggers a very negative psychological reaction in people.
Let's look at the mechanics of faking it. People decide they need to act charismatic, so they begin by mimicking others.
Mimicking, meaning copying, like watching a CEO online and copying their hand gestures.
Or memorizing a list of perfect questions for a dinner party, forcing their shoulders back to fake confidence.
Let's put this into a specific scenario. Imagine you're at a professional conference.
Okay, I'm standing near the coffee station.
Right, and someone approaches you. They have this massive, unblinking smile plastered on their face.
Oh, I know this person.
They give you a perfectly firm handshake, exactly like a business book told them to, and they launch into this incredibly polished dialogue.
Hello, it is absolutely wonderful to meet you. I have heard such tremendous things about your projects.
Exactly. On paper, if you read a transcript of that, they are doing everything correctly.
They're polite, enthusiastic, offering compliments.
But in reality, when you are standing in front of that person, your stomach usually drops.
You feel this primitive warning signal in your gut. You see them smiling perfectly, saying the right words, but you suddenly realize you do not trust them.
In fact, your main urge is to just step backward and leave the conversation.
But wait, let me push back a bit. Isn't fake it till you make it a really famous piece of advice in English?
Oh, it's a ubiquitous piece of advice in professional environments.
The theory is, pretend to be confident, your brain will catch up, and you'll become confident. Why doesn't that work here?
It's incredibly dangerous when applied to charisma. Fake it till you make it or left it can work. It might work for a technical skill, like learning a software program.
But it fails in social dynamics because humans are walking biological lie detectors.
We possess a deep evolutionary instinct designed to protect us from deception.
Our brains evolved in tribal communities where trusting the wrong person could literally mean death.
So our brains are constantly, subconsciously scanning faces for signs of deception. We process an incomprehensible amount of data every second.
We pick up on micro-expressions, tiny muscle movements that last a fraction of a second.
Microscopic changes in vocal tone. We notice if the muscles around their eyes are actually engaging when they smile.
And because of this, we can just feel when someone isn't being authentic. We know they're wearing a mask.
Which brings us to a very useful English phrase for our B2 learners. Something feels off.
Oh, yes, something feels off.
When native speakers use the word off in this context, they don't mean turning off a light switch.
Right. They mean something is not normal or slightly distorted.
Like if you smell a carton of milk and it has a slightly sour scent, you wouldn't say, this milk is entirely rotten. You'd say, this milk smells a bit off.
It means it's not safe to drink. We use it for environments, too. Imagine walking into a room where two friends just had a screaming argument, but they stopped right as you opened the door.
Oh, the tension. The room is silent. No one is yelling.
But the moment you walk in, you immediately think, something feels off in here. Your nervous system is screaming that the environment is unstable.
And that is exactly what happens when you meet the person who is smiling too much and trying too hard.
Your brain receives the data of their smile, but also their tight jaw and rehearsed voice. The data doesn't match.
And when data doesn't match, the brain flags it as deception. They haven't insulted you, but you know they aren't showing their true face.
Which is the direct result of forcing a personality.
Let's explain forcing. In English, forcing usually means pushing something against its natural state.
Like forcing a stuck door open with your shoulder. You use physical strength.
But emotional forcing destroys charisma. It's trying to artificially generate a feeling that doesn't exist in your body.
Forcing a laugh when the joke isn't funny. Forcing enthusiasm for a topic you hate.
The problem with forcing an emotion is that it requires immense physical effort. People can actually see the tension in your body.
Your neck is rigid. Your breathing is shallow. And because humans are empathetic, when we see tension, we become tense.
You make them uncomfortable because you are uncomfortable. The whole foundation of charisma collapses.
So, if faking it fails and forcing creates this repellent tension, we have to look at the solution we discovered in our research.
Yes. How do you stop forcing?
You shift your entire mindset toward authenticity.
Authenticity is the antidote. But let's explain what that word really means in practice.
When we advocate for authenticity, we mean giving yourself permission to stop performing.
Because performing is exhausting. Let's detail the mental shift. When you are performing, your brain is in a state of panic.
You're having a conversation, but your internal monologue is screaming. What should I say next? Does that sound smart? Should I laugh now?
You aren't in the conversation. You're directing yourself like an actor.
But when you shift to authenticity, you change the script. Instead of asking, what should I say to impress them? You ask, what do I actually think? How do I genuinely feel?
The impact on your physiology is incredible.
I realized this myself a few years ago. I was wasting so much energy performing interest in things I didn't care about.
Let's use a relatable example.
Okay, imagine you're at a neighborhood gathering and you get trapped talking to someone obsessed with a really boring topic.
Oh, like they collect rare vintage postage stamps.
Exactly. And they're giving you a 20-minute lecture on the history of 19th century European paper adhesives.
Well, we have all been hostage in that conversation.
And the standard performing protocol is to nod enthusiastically, fake a smile, and say, wow, paper adhesives. Tell me more about the watermarks.
While your brain is just melting from boredom.
Yes. You are looking for an escape. And the truth is, the other person can sense your enthusiasm is hollow. It feels off.
But our personal findings show genuine charisma offers a completely freeing approach. Authenticity means you do not have to pretend to care about the stamps.
Instead, you pivot the conversation to find something you're actually curious about.
Well, wait, how do you do that without insulting their hobby?
You ask a real question about the human being, rather than the boring object. You drop the fake expertise and lean into genuine curiosity.
Give us an example of what you'd say.
I might smile and say, I have to be completely honest, I know absolutely zero about stamps. But I am genuinely curious about your passion for it. Why did you choose to dedicate a decade of your life to this hobby?
That is a masterclass in authentic communication. You didn't fake knowledge. You admitted ignorance.
Which removes all the pressure on me to perform.
And you pivoted from the mechanics of the hobby to the emotion behind it. Humans love to talk about what brings them joy.
The results are magical. When you stop performing, you invite honest communication.
Yeah.
The other person actually relaxes physically.
Because they don't have to defensively explain historical details anymore. They get to talk about their feelings.
And you get to listen to a story about human motivation, which is way more interesting than paper glue.
You created a deeper connection by refusing to fake your interest.
And this creates a natural, unforced confidence in you. You aren't terrified they'll ask a technical stamp question because you already cheerfully admitted you know nothing.
You disarmed the bomb yourself.
Let's ensure the vocabulary here is crystal clear. Let's explore the noun authenticity and its adjective form, authentic.
Authentic means genuine, real, not a copy or a forgery like an authentic painting in a museum, not a factory print.
When applied to psychology, it means your outward behavior perfectly matches your inward reality. You are showing original thoughts, not a fake copy of a good person.
We should contrast that with performing. When you hear performing, you think of a theater, an actor on stage.
Right. An actor might perform deep sadness, crying on stage, but in real life, they're happy. The sadness is a performance.
So when we accuse someone of performing in social life, they're treating reality like a stage, playing a character named the confident business person.
Authenticity is taking off the costume and just being human.
But this brings us to a massive psychological roadblock. We know performing is exhausting.
But this raises a brutal chicken or the egg dilemma. Which comes first, confidence or authenticity?
Most people would argue you need confidence to be authentic.
Right. It takes bravery to show your true unpolished self. If you have low self-esteem, it feels dangerous.
So people think, I will fake it for a few years, build my confidence, and then eventually I will be authentic.
It sounds completely logical. Protect yourself until you're strong. But our research completely flips that assumption upside down.
Confidence does not precede authenticity. Authenticity generates confidence.
Let's repeat that. Confidence does not come first. Authenticity creates the confidence.
It sounds backward, but when you look at anxiety, it makes sense. When you perform, you carry a massive invisible weight.
The fear of being exposed. Worried you'll step out of character and people will discover the real flawed you.
But the moment you start pretending, that weight vanishes. You instantly relax because there is no mask to maintain.
You aren't trying to remember the right thing to say. You just say what's on your mind.
And because you accept your flaws, you stop obsessing over whether people are judging those flaws. You take their power away.
Okay, let me challenge this with a real-world scenario, because listeners might find this hard to apply.
Okay, hit me.
What if my authentic self is currently feeling sheer terror? Like I'm walking into the most important job interview of my life.
Right.
My palms are sweating, my heart is hammering, my hands are shaking. If I show that terror, doesn't that make me the opposite of charismatic?
That is the ultimate stress test of this theory, and the psychology holds up beautifully.
Really? Won't they see me as weak?
No. If you are experiencing extreme nervous energy, the most charismatic thing you can do is accept it and even name it out loud.
Walk me through how that looks. How do I admit terror without looking incompetent?
Imagine you walk into the interview. 3 executives are staring at you. Your hands are shaking.
If I fake confidence, my voice gets tight. They feel that off tension.
Exactly. They feel uncomfortable. But instead, you sit down, take a breath, smile, and say, I have to be honest. I am feeling quite nervous right now.
Oh, wow.
You say, this opportunity means a great deal to me, so my heart is beating fast. Please bear with me as I settle in.
Just imagining saying that makes me feel vulnerable. But the psychological impact is incredible.
It's a total pattern interrupt. In a corporate world of fake perfection, absolute honesty is shocking.
And strangely, it makes you appear more grounded and competent. But why? Why does admitting weakness signal competence?
Because of human empathy, everyone in that room has experienced crippling nervousness. It's a universal human experience.
So when you admit it, you trigger their empathy.
Yeah.
You connect as humans.
They think, I know exactly how that feels. And suddenly, the thick tension in the room just evaporates.
You made them feel comfortable by exposing your vulnerability. You showed emotional intelligence and courage. That is charismatic leadership.
And the physical benefit is immediate. Once you admit you're nervous, the panic subsides because you aren't wasting energy hiding it.
The secret is out. You can just focus on the conversation.
This phenomenon illustrates a crucial English vocabulary concept. the paradox.
Ah, yes, a paradox. For our B2 learners, a paradox is a situation that seems impossible because it contains two contradictory facts.
At first glance, it defies logic, but it reveals a deeper truth.
Like the paradox of learning. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know.
Or the paradox of sleep. The harder you try to force yourself to fall asleep, the more awake you become. You have to stop trying to succeed.
And that maps perfectly onto confidence. The harder you try to hide your fear, the more fragile and tense you appear.
But the moment you say, I'm terrified right now, you project immense bravery and charisma.
Such a beautiful mechanism. Another important word here is judgment. Authenticity frees you from the fear of judgment.
Judgment is evaluating someone and forming an opinion about their character or value, usually negative evaluation.
We visualize walking into a room and everyone is acting like a judge, analyzing our clothes, our accent, declaring us unworthy.
But authenticity acts as a shield against judgment. When you accept yourself, their judgment loses its destructive power.
You already accepted the truth, so their opinion can't harm you.
So, if we know all of this, if authenticity relieves pressure and builds connection, why is it so rare?
What stops people from living authentically?
The giant wall standing in our way is our human desire to look good in the eyes of others.
The overwhelming need to impress people.
The need to impress is the ultimate charisma killer. It triggers massive cognitive overload.
It causes chronic overthinking. When your goal is to make someone think you are intelligent, wealthy, or funny, you sabotage your ability to connect.
Your brain goes into overdrive. While they talk, you aren't listening. You're calculating.
If I tell this vacation story, will they think I'm rich? Should I mention my promotion? Am I making the right facial expressions?
And this mental chaos manifests physically. Overthinking makes your body rigid.
Your breathing moves to your shallow chest. Your vocal cords tighten, raising your pitch.
And as we know, the other person's instincts pick up on that tension. The need to impress buries your natural, charismatic personality.
But during our research for today's episode, we found a specific mental trick to dismantle this need to impress.
Yes, you've started using this, right? Let's break down how it works.
I have, and it really changed how I approach networking. It's about changing the invisible script in your head.
What was your old script?
For most of my life, walking into a crowded room, my brain looped one anxious question. Do they like me?
Do they like me? Do they think I'm smart? Am I winning their approval?
Exactly. It's a position of weakness. But the mental trick is to force your brain to ask a fundamentally different question.
Instead of, do they like me?
You look at the other person and ask yourself, do I like this conversation?
Wow. Let's unpack the psychological architecture of why that is so powerful. It inverts the power dynamic.
When you ask, do they like me? Your focus is pointed inward at your own flaws. You are on a pedestal for them to judge.
Operating from a submissive posture, begging for validation.
But asking, do I like this conversation? That moves the focus outward. You are no longer the one being evaluated. You are the evaluator.
You're checking in with your own curiosity. Is this subject actually stimulating?
The physical relief is instant. You step off the stage. You stop performing magic tricks for a stranger's love.
And if the honest answer is no, this is boring and they are rude, you realize you have the agency to just walk away.
You aren't trapped trying to win over someone you don't even enjoy.
This distinction lets us clearly differentiate between two English phrases that sound similar but are opposite goals.
Making an impression versus making a connection.
Let's explain making an impression first. This is ego-driven. You want someone to admire you.
You want them to tell their friends, wow, I met the most impressive wealthy person? You're establishing status above theirs.
You're pushing your curated image onto them, handing them your verbal resume.
But making a connection operates on a completely different frequency. You're building a horizontal bridge between equals.
Searching for shared interests or vulnerabilities, not trying to make them say, look at you. You want a moment where you both say, me too.
Me too. That is the heartbeat of true charisma. Connection says, I understand you. Impression says, I am better than you.
Charisma is always about building the connection.
We use two descriptive words there we should clarify for learners, tense and overthink.
Right. Tense is an adjective describing tightness. Like making a hard fist, your forearm muscles become tense.
But we also use tense for emotional states. Like sitting in a hospital waiting room, your mind is tense with anxiety.
Or a boardroom where executives are glaring at each other, the atmosphere is tense.
When you try to impress people, your body becomes tense. You move stiffly like a robot.
And that physical tension is generated by overthinking. A great compound word, meaning thinking about something too much, to a destructive point.
Like taking a simple text message and overanalyzing it. A friend replies, "Okay with a period?"
And you spiral. Why a period? Are they mad? Did I do something wrong? You overthink a simple confirmation into a crisis.
In social situations, overthinking is fatal to charisma because it rips you out of the present moment. You can't connect if you aren't actually listening.
So we've established a strong case for authenticity, dropping the performance, avoiding overthinking, focusing on connection.
However, we have to draw a very hard, very clear boundary here. There is a dangerous misunderstanding of this concept.
Yes, the crucial caveat. A caveat is a warning or condition.
We've spent this entire time telling you to be real, stop hiding your feelings. But being authentic does not mean you have permission to abandon basic social manners and empathy.
Right. The warning is that authenticity is not a license to say every random, unfiltered thought that pops into your brain.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. People use authenticity as an excuse for terrible behavior all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
We all know someone who says brutally mean things, insults someone's clothes, and then says, "What? I'm just being honest. I'm keeping it real."
Isn't any filter technically a performance?
That's the exact defense mechanism people use to justify cruelty, a twisted definition of authenticity.
But let's look at our psychological framework. It comes down to wearing a deceptive mask versus using an empathetic filter.
Back at the beginning, our definition of charisma was about how people feel in your presence, making them feel comfortable and safe.
Precisely. And if you use authenticity to deliver a brutal insult, you make that person feel terrible, attacked and uncomfortable.
So by definition, you have annihilated any possibility of charisma. You're not a truth teller, you're a bully.
True charisma requires cognitive empathy and deep respect for the other person.
Authenticity is expressing your true self clearly, but balancing it with respect. You can be real without being destructive.
Let's ground this in a highly practical example to show the boundary.
Okay, imagine your friend invites you over for dinner. They spent 3 hours cooking a special meal. They serve it, beaming with pride, and you take a bite.
But honestly, it tastes terrible. They poured way too much salt into the sauce. It's almost inedible.
The person using authenticity as a weapon would spit it into a napkin and say, "This is disgusting. You ruined this with salt."
And they would proudly claim they're an honest person.
But a truly charismatic person processes it differently. Now, they don't lie. Lying is performing.
Right. They don't force a fake smile and say, "This is the most delicious meal of my life." The friend's subconscious would detect the fake smile anyway.
So what's the middle path? What is the charismatic response?
It focuses on truth wrapped in connection and respect. You might put your fork down, smile warmly, and say,
"I am so incredibly grateful you spent all afternoon cooking for me. My palate is pretty sensitive and it's a little bit too salty for my taste, but the underlying spices are amazing. What recipe did you use?"
Look at the nuance there. You told the absolute truth. It was too salty to eat.
But you delivered it respectfully, validated their effort, centered the problem on your own taste buds rather than attacking their skill as a chef.
You maintained the connection. This highlights a vital English vocabulary distinction, the difference between being honest and being rude.
Honest means you tell the truth. You don't lie, cheat, or steal. It's a factual baseline.
But rude operates differently. Rude means to be offensive, impolite, or having bad manners, actively hurting or disrespecting people.
These two concepts are not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely be honest without being rude.
And you can be incredibly rude while being completely honest. The difference is how you deliver the message.
And delivery must be governed by being respectful, meaning you show consideration for other people's feelings and dignity.
Recognizing they have value even if you hate the food they cooked for you.
So the ultimate governing rule is authenticity is about being real, not about being rude.
If your brand of keeping it real consistently leaves a trail of hurt people, you lack social intelligence.
True. Magnetic charisma requires both unflinching authenticity and deep empathy at the exact same time.
It's a delicate balance. But when you find it, it's a powerful tool. People feel immense safety around you.
Safe because you won't lie to them, and safe because you won't needlessly attack them. That combination is magnetic charisma.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of our notes for today's episode. With all these concepts, what is the foundational secret?
The core thesis is profoundly simple. Charisma is not an external skill you add to your personality. You can't buy a box of charisma.
You can't memorize a checklist of phrases and staple them onto your brain like armor.
Charisma is not an addition. It is a revelation. Charisma is something you reveal to the world when you finally find the courage to stop hiding.
That is the most vital takeaway. It's something you reveal when you stop hiding.
It emerges naturally when you accept yourself, quirks and flaws included. Accept that you get nervous. Accept that you don't know everything.
And that you don't need to impress everyone. When you speak honestly, the physical tension drains from your muscles.
You relax into who you truly are, and people instinctively feel it.
They feel that authentic warmth, that quiet, fascinating painting in the museum.
They feel comfortable, interesting, and connected. That comforting warmth they feel in their own chest. That is charisma.
You don't need manipulation tactics. You absolutely do not need to alter your core personality, introvert or extrovert.
You simply need to be more of who you already are. You already possess everything you need inside of you.
You just have to give yourself radical permission to let it out without the fear of judgment.
This has been such a rewarding exploration. We hope that as we unpacked human connection today, you felt your English comprehension expanding.
Yes, words like myth, paradox, authenticity, and respect are now vivid and ready to be used in your own authentic conversations.
Thank you so much for joining us on ESL Listening Practice today. We genuinely love working on English comprehension alongside these psychological topics.
Learning a language isn't just about grammar rules. It's about understanding human connection, communicating our deepest truths.
Precisely. Finding the words to express your authentic self. And before we close out, I want to leave you, the person listening right now, with a final provocative thought.
Think back to the very beginning, when we talked about that person who naturally attracts everyone's attention.
Take a moment and think about the most genuinely charismatic person you know in your own life. Picture their face, how they interact with people.
Ask yourself, are they constantly performing for you, sweating and striving to impress you?
Are they simply the most comfortable, grounded person in the room? And if they're simply comfortable, what would happen if, just for tomorrow, you allowed yourself to be that comfortable in your own skin?
What if you walked into your office or your English classroom and decided that for one single day, you were completely done performing?
How would the world react to the real you? Think about it.